John Wertz here, Montgomery County Tea Party. It is December 5th at 1:30 in the afternoon. We're here with Brett Ligon, who's running for SD4. With me are Bob Bagley, Luis Pedraza, Lana Horn, Kendra Yamaguchi, and Larry Rogers. Welcome.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks
Um,
for doing our questionnaire and for coming in. So
of course,
the floor is yours.
I was telling Bob, I approached John and I said, I want to be vetted and I want to go through the questionnaire. I don't want anybody to think that I take it for granted that I'm applying for a new position. And as much as my ego as a trial attorney has, I felt like it was important enough for you to get answers on things I believe beyond what I would do within the criminal courthouse. And so one of the things that Pat Tibbs said that hurt my feelings, but in a funny way, she's like, Brett, you've been in the courthouse for so long. I don't know that people know what you do anymore. I was like, well, Pat, I'm hometown famous. What do you mean they don't know? So I know that people may have lost sight of the career and things that I'd done at the DA's office that I think mattered. And I think they were one of the reasons that the lieutenant governor and the Brandon had sought me out as a possible likely candidate for Senate District 4. So I have been the longest running district attorney in Montgomery County, and it was the mission that I thought I would retire from. I loved the mission. I was in the middle of a murder case when I got the phone call from the lieutenant governor asking me if I would call him. I thought they were in session, and I've testified so many times. I thought it was going to be a session question. And I had two people in the vehicle with me, and I had a murder file of an 18-year-old girl that had been stabbed to death up in San Jacinto County. And that's kind of been my reputation to go all around the state, handle difficult cases, and bring justice in. And the lieutenant governor had said, hey, I want you to think about running for SD4 for Senate. I said, can I call you back? And I didn't call him back, but my name had been mentioned several times for the attorney general's race at the state level and for appointment to um, the Southern District of Texas on the federal side. And they were all great jobs, but they were not the type of job I felt like that you could have an immediate impact in. And I loved my community. I loved Montgomery County. And so along the way, the lieutenant governor started saying the things that a guy like me, who is a servant born, and he'd say, I want you to do for the state of Texas what you've been doing for Montgomery County. And I'd say, all right, well, let's drill down on that. What does that look like? What does that sound like? And part of it is the ability to work in groups and so we've got 27 law enforcement agencies, 5 constables, the sheriff's department, and all of them have individual authority. And people don't have authority over each other, they only have influence. And so I've been able to get them all on the same page, oftentimes from the same sheet of music. I know y'all know how difficult that is. You can have like-minded people of the same party that can agree about many things, but if you can't get them on the same sheet of music, it sounds more like staccato instead of a cappella. And I've been successful at that. I've been successful at helping pass legislation that kept not only Montgomery County people safe, but citizens of the state of Texas safe. And so I have not been without controversy. I haven't sought it out, but I haven't shied away from it. I'm Catholic. I think people know that I've never lost my faith, but I've struggled with my relationship with the church because they were hiding a pedophilic priest. And I said I would not go back to mass until I'd put the priest in prison because you shan't defy the state of Texas. Nobody's above the law and nobody was below the law. I executed a classmate. And the only reason I think that things like that are important is I was always willing to be unelected if doing the right thing meant losing public standing. I've had friends that I've had to put in prison. I've had relatives of friends to be put in prison. I've lost some some friendships that I've had since I was a kid because that was part of the job. I don't mind telling people no. I don't mind standing strong on issues. And I'm not trying to be all things to all people because I believe that people oftentimes would rather have an honest, polite no versus a deferral of being led on to believe that things are going to happen that don't happen because people don't take responsibility for them. As the DA, I've taken responsibility for everything that came out of the DA's office, regardless if I was personally involved or regardless if I would have done the same decision. I took responsibility. I've never, ever shied away from what it meant to be the DA in the county. And I think that the senatorial position is the same. You'll see from my resume, my marriage has not been, it's been a textbook marriage. We met in elementary school. And sometimes I think the only reason we weren't divorced is she didn't want to divorce me. At the same time, I wanted to divorce her. But 32 years later, we're still best friends. I've got two kids that are better than me and my wife both put together. They raised themselves as Baptists. My wife and I still practice our Catholic faith, but I am so proud of my kids. My daughter is a junior at Dallas Baptist. My son is a nurse, married Kelly Rowland, married literally the Fair Queen. I still live in the same community that I grew up in. And I tell people I am hometown famous. You can't unhometown the guy that had the longest touchdown from scrimmage in 1986. So, anyway, and I appreciate y'all's support.
All right, thank you for that. And the questions will be answers will be 2 minutes long for the question. That's
Absolutely. Thank you for it.
Yes, sir.
I will hit my time, I promise.
All righty. So you said as district attorney, you built one of the most respected prosecutor offices in Texas, that you created specialized divisions to target public corruption. Let's start with that one. Define public corruption. Is that just the general public? Is that public officials?
Sure.
Number one, and number two, which major crimes have been uncovered?
Perfect.
On your watch?
All right. So the question that John's asking me for purposes of the video is, in my bio, it indicates that I created specialized divisions within the district attorney's office, whether it was internet crimes against children or whether it was domestic violence, but specifically public integrity. And so a public integrity crime is a crime that's committed by the government. And so if you are within course and scope of your employment as an officer and you receive a check from the government and you violate the law or you accuse of violating the law, that would be a public crime, a public corruption, or a public integrity investigation. And so, for example, if an officer uses force and that force results in a fatality, that investigation is going to be conducted not only by a homicide division, but also by the public integrity division of the district attorney's office. And all those cases would go before a grand jury. If you're around the nation, you think that public corruption crimes deal with police officers. The vast majority of public corruption that we deal with are school teachers and volunteer fire departments. I know it's not a sexy thing to talk about, but it's the malfeasance when it comes to record keeping, and then going beyond what their mission statement is and hiding of funds and spending of funds inappropriately. So school teachers are the number one public integrity crime that's committed within Montgomery County that we deal with on a daily basis. And you think it's male teachers having sex with female students, and that does happen. But our number one crime in public integrity are female teachers having sex with male students. And so if you start to pay attention now to the public integrity investigations, you'll see it. I removed a district court judge. I removed a county commissioner. I have removed school board members. I've removed mayors, put mayors in prison, put city council people in prison. That's in my 2 minutes.
Well, if you have a thought, go ahead and finish the thought if you have that.
So I like to say we overhauled the entirety of Patton Village. We put the mayor in prison. We convicted several city councilmen. It was a theft ring, stealing from government.
Was that Patton Village?
That was in Patton Village. We indicted the city manager and several city councilmen in Oak Ridge. Overhauled that government. There was a purchasing contract. I believe, and I won't go on the, I believe I've overhauled county government several times in regards to some of the investigations have led to resignations. And so the police get a lot of attention. A police officer getting a DWI off duty is not a public integrity investigation. That's a regular criminal investigation handled by regular prosecutors, good prosecutors, but not specialized prosecutors. A police officer who lies on his daily activity report and steals money or is stealing time from the county in the sense that they're double dipping or working an extra job while they're getting paid that would be a public integrity investigation. Lazy cops got fired. Thieving cops got indicted. And so if you lie on your daily activity report because you're asleep at home, you're lazy and you're lying, and you should be fired and you should not be a cop. We took the difference of lazy people don't need to be in work in business, thieves need to be prosecuted. And so some of the things we do the same thing with city council, school boards. If I find somebody had violated a law that necessitated them being removed from office. So Mike Seiler is a good example, and it's no ill will towards Mike. Mike was a very conservative district court judge, and Mike accessed the voter database as a district court judge. He accessed the juror database as a district court judge, and he can't do it for political purposes. And so he accessed the database to send materials out. And I liked Mike a lot. His daughter, I've given money to the Race Foundation. Kenneth Seiler is brilliant. These are people that I like what they did for the community, but Mike broke the law. All right. So what was my response as a prosecutor? He couldn't have violated the law if he wasn't a judge. And so I made the decision in the middle of a campaign to let the voters decide, but I made Mike resign as a district court judge, and I made it to where he can never run for judge. He can't run for JP, he can't run for district court judge or county court judge. And I left it up to the state bar as to decide whether or not they were going to take his license. And so those are the things where you remove somebody from office. If a plumber is a bad plumber, you want him to quit being a plumber. And so sometimes just getting him out of the job would be so. I mean, John, I could go on and on for public integrity. Current cases I won't talk about are the ones that were pending while I was still there.
Sure. All right, Bob.
One of the questions is what's your view regarding reducing or eliminating property taxes in favor of increased sales tax or increased user fees? And you said you support reducing and ultimately eliminating property taxes. Do you have a plan to accomplish this?
So Boucher and I were talking about this particular issue the other day. I don't like just jumping into the red meat because it sounds. I always feel sorry for people who don't read the fine print, and so it would have been the easiest thing in the world for me to go. I want to eliminate property taxes because it's a mainstream position. Well, I do too. I have a house that 7 years from now I will have actually paid for. I put it on a 15-year note, and I've owned it for 8 years. I like the idea of owning that house 7 years from now and not having it unconstitutionally taken from me. I like the idea that I could actually work as a public servant, and eventually at 65, it was a plan. I had a plan. I was going to own a house. But with property taxes, the concern is obviously that you can't own your own home. The concern is that you and I look at it as a public safety issue. If I'm not safe in my own home, if I feel like I get taxed out, my wife thinks I need to work until I'm 78, according to her, so that we can live where we're currently living. I don't like that plan. But it's too easy to say, I want to eliminate property tax. I could say that all day and people would vote for me for saying that. But I have been the one going, I'm listening to plans. Brandon and I have talked about this one quite a bit. There was a projection that said state sales tax, if it's just state sales tax, would go up to 22 or 23%. If so, at least it's a consumption tax, and at least it's something that people have some degree of choice, if it's a choice to eat or not, if it's a choice to get groceries or not. So some services have to be cut. And I always go, man, don't ask me this question. Ask me the real question. So the firefighters, when they asked me, they said, what's your position on property taxes? I said, yeah, I don't want to know my position on property taxes. You want to hear about your pensions. You want to hear about your retirements. Same way with school teachers. So let's don't mess around. I don't think you're toying with me by saying what the really issue is. What do you do with your public servants who've lived off ad valorem taxes? And nobody's told me the solution yet. So here's several. And some are unpalatable to me because there's a hidden cost there, right? I don't know what happened to the lottery. I keep buying a ticket and it hasn't solved the economy. It hasn't solved the economy for me. I know that we can cut somewhere, but every group, I'm finding this out. For every group there is, there's another group screaming just as loud on the other side. All right, so we now spend $3.2 billion on border security. That's a federal issue. It should be a federal issue. When Perry was in office, we were spending $880 million. Less than $1 billion, not that much money, right? There's $2 billion right there. Where would that money go if the federal government did what they should? Maybe you could cut it. So I'm waiting for people who have a plan. John and I can agree that you can't turn the spigot off. There has to be a plan in place, and there has to be. I think we saw it in Europe with Brexit. You just can't reverse it. So how are you going to fund DPS? How are you going to fund infrastructure? How are you going to fund some of the bigger issues? The Robin Hood. Man, I could talk all day about Robin Hood. So I don't know some of these solutions. I know what my intent is. My intent is to get in there and go, okay, we got to do something different than what we've been doing. But I mean, the reality is I've been a prosecutor for 17 years, and I only know what I know because I'm a consumer. And I know that it's a big issue because it's a big issue to me. I'm 57. It's the oldest I've ever been in my whole life. And it's the closest I've ever been to a possible retirement one day. And I'm concerned about issues that I was not concerned about at 38 years old. So, I mean, if the Tea Party has a plan, I want to hear it. But I think it's just too much red meat. It's a popular thing to say, I'm going to eliminate, but you don't hear me saying it. Because you would walk up to me at a restaurant and go, hey, Brett, you said you're going to eliminate them. What's the plan? I'm like, I know you got to phase them out. At a minimum, you got to phase them out and you got to replace them with something. It's probably going to end up being a combination of things and a reduction of things. That's kind of what I think. What do you think?
I think we need to abide by the Constitution.
Sure.
And that we didn't have property taxes, they're not constitutional.
Sure, but we didn't have paved roads, bridges.
Doesn't matter.
Bob, the easy saying,
Constitution.
Bob, but you're also with, was it MS1? But what board are you on?
NCHD.
Okay. Ambulances need roads to travel on.
I understand, and that's why we pay gas taxes. At the pumps.
So gas taxes it is. If your plan is gas taxes.
Yeah, but what's happened to that? Just like the lottery, buddy.
Bob, all you're doing is moving it from one pile to the next.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sitting there going, I want to hear it. I'll listen. But even the plans that say, hey, look, let's follow the Texas Constitution. We have gas tax. Okay. What are you going to do with your 18-wheelers then? Because if you have a gas tax and you take a gallon, hey, the backbone of America, it ain't Amazon. If you ask my wife, it's Shimu. It's Temu. It's Temu and Amazon. But you and I both know that from the ports everywhere else, it's the 18-wheelers. Exactly. So what do you do with those guys that they're barely making it? If a gallon of gas is $18 because that's constitutional, then you're gonna subsidize. And then subsidy is a bad word because now all of a sudden that's anti-capitalism. That's what I'm saying. These solutions aren't.
I didn't say it was going to be easy.
Yeah, I agree.
But abiding by the Constitution is not always easy.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they put me back here because I was late, but I'm okay with that.
He's being punished.
He's got darker skin than me.
Yeah,
you
I
got
had
here
to come
before I
back there.
did.
So one of the questions was making politics a career. One of the things I've realized, and I haven't been doing this as long as some of these other esteemed people here, but when you get into politics, it seems like you're raw and nice, and you have all the right attitudes. You want to do right, but over a course of 4, 6, 10 years, you become just a little different because basically the money and the power gets too big. I've actually heard state officials say, "I'm only going to do this for a limited time because I don't want to be corrupted." I knew a state rep that only did it for like 4 or 6 years just for that reason. He didn't want to be corrupted. But that's not really my question. You're going from a DA pay to a state senator pay.
Right.
That's a huge change.
He won't be able to pay his taxes.
Only by $200 and something thousand.
So I guess that's my concern with your office. So I'd like you to
If
kind of
that's your
address that.
concern, it's my concern too.
And his wife.
Because we're from the same hometown. my wife's family were record drivers. So my wife grew up in a trailer, and her and her sister Stephanie, my favorite sister-in-law, she's funny. They would put a blanket over the head because in the vents in a trailer they come up, and so in the winter. So we come from no money. There are you have never met another Ligon, maybe somewhere. There's a black family in Dallas of gunsmiths, and there's some Ligons, and there was a black guy from law school. There was a Ligon. I don't know any other Ligons. So there's no long line of me. There's no long line of success. This was a make or break career. My stepdad was a police officer. That kind of explains the evolution of what I wanted to do. So the money issue has been a solve for me. I have retired as the district attorney, but I'm trying to do it the right way. And it turns out to be the dumb way. I am a trial attorney. I am a subject matter expert. I am the guy that all over the state of Texas, people have asked me to come in. And the one law that I'm refusing to practice is criminal law. And it's the easiest one for me to make the most money. And I'm trying to do this the right way by saying I will not practice criminal law, because if I'm going to advocate on the two committees that the lieutenant governor says I'm most likely to vice chair, is criminal justice and border. Now, I can either be a purist and an idealist, and I can swing hard for public safety, but if I start doing criminal law, then I start becoming alligator armed. So what am I doing? When I contacted, uh, I have the receipts, as the kids say nowadays. I initially told the lieutenant governor, no, I wanted to gracefully bow out. And he called me and he said, why? And then I used some profanity. I think you've heard the story publicly. And I said, well, I have FU attitude, but I don't have FU money to, and I didn't say that. I didn't know he didn't cuss, and he told me. So, Lieutenant Governor, I apologize. That's how I know you don't cuss, because he told me he does not cuss in his daily life. But he understood the sentiment. And he said, I'll help you with that. And I've, I've had several law firms that have contacted me, and I've contacted them. And I don't mind saying it publicly. I've been concerned because I will be owned by no man any more than I would allow the Catholic Church to intimidate me. I have to advocate on behalf of Senate District 4. And my values align incredibly well with the lieutenant governors, particularly on the social issues, particularly on the criminal issues. However, my concern, and I've expressed it to him, which is, if you can help me get a job, can you unhelp me if I don't cooperate in a certain way? And so I'm so stupid. I have still not taken a job, because I want to make sure this, you would not like being married to me. I am such a, you can ask me to do anything, and I will, my nature is to help. If you try to make me do something, all you can do is unvote me. And I already live where I'm going to die. So it gives me that kind of an attitude that says, if people can turn it on, then they can turn it off. And if I please them, they turn it on. And if I displease them, then they turn it off. So I'm navigating that. And I do have a skill set, and I do high end litigation. I whether it was the police union or other ones. And so as a trial attorney, there's no absence of law firms. I was offered a job by Rusty Harden, who I adore, but I didn't want to mix messages, because then I would have to advocate criminal law. And so I'm navigating civil law in a way right now, and I've got several offers. I have a doctor's group that I'm doing some legal work for right now that's allowing me to. It's letter writing, those types of deals, and so I'm refusing to use my title even. I don't want to sign letters as the former district attorney or the retired district attorney, because then people are using my title to gain advantage. I want to gain advantage because I've beat you in the courtroom, or because I'm doing it the right way. And so I'm not going about this very well as a moneymaker. I never set out to make money, and my wife says I've been very successful.
And by the way, I have to say that issue with Catholics. I'm a Catholic, and I wrote our bishop a letter one time when I went to church for the last time. Just totally.
Was it Fiorenza?
Was totally
Was it Fiorenza?
It was his pastor, assistant pastor, and so I've gotten at odds with the Catholic Church, but I'm still Catholic.
So I love my faith, but even on if you'll see my bio, I don't talk about my Catholic faith. What I say is my faith, because I don't want to get too convoluted in it. I've never lost my faith.
You're not the only one.
I've never lost it, but I don't. Um, my daughter has been praying for me and saying, now that you're no longer the DA, I don't have to be the sword for the community. And she's hoping that I can lay the sword down a little bit. We'll see.
We'll see.
You were talking earlier about limiting property taxes, and does anybody have a plan? Don Huffman has written a book on it.
Really?
It systematically goes through how we can get them to here.
Okay.
We're doing it.
I'll be happy
And
to.
stands behind it. So he's, from an economic standpoint, he's solved a lot of the major barriers.
It's worth taking a look at.
See, it's a phase out. And John and Boucher and I both agree. Anything you're going to do is going to have to give people notice. It's going to have to be a sea change. And so that's why I hate to. It's one of the most important, but it's just so easy as a Republican to say it. And people go, "Oh, he's brilliant. He's brilliant." And I want to be involved with big problems and come up with big solutions. And I don't mind dealing with disappointment early on and telling people, Bob, I told you we were going to do this, but if you thought it was going to happen yesterday, you weren't listening. I'd rather be very realistic with people because as a DA, there was nobody else that I could pass responsibility to. And so I had to be responsible for the things that I said and did.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of the problem we have with the legislature today, though. Every time we come up, every session, they're going to lower the property taxes, or they're gonna eliminate property taxes, and we get absolutely no.
It's a shell game, Bob. You and I both know it is
But
with
we're looking for somebody
property valuation.
with some kind of credibility to go in there and actually do something about it. And we've had two people that have run for governor that have had plans. We have Texas Public Policy.
TPPI,
that has-
Public
that
Policy
has a-
Institute, yes.
That has a plan. Nobody wants to listen. The legislature doesn't want to listen, and that's gonna be your new role. And we're gonna expect you to listen to us and try to do something. I'm not saying you're gonna be the one that's gonna, run with the.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to put
Move
me
the
on.
ball down the
I don't think
field.
they're going to put me on the tax
Well,
board.
you don't know.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
This is where we're
What-
at.
What's the name of the book?
The name, I'm not sure what's Don, I thought he just said 10-year plan.
That it's-
No, he's saying it's a 10-year
not
plan.
all
Oh, you're
that,
saying
though.
As a lawyer, when I've met with almost every trade group that I can get my hands on, and I always start with, is there a statute or a rule or law that controls this? And I have this many from
Oh, yeah.
this because it's everything between the Houston Boat Pilot Association, the Galveston Boat Pilot Association. I even had them send me the lawsuit so I could try to figure out. I don't mind lobbyists. All I've asked them is, tell me when you're lobbying me and tell me when it's your opinion, and we will get along just well. If you try to tell me something as a fact and it turns out not to be a fact, then it'll be on an email basis. And so, I want to start off with trusting people to a degree, but I'd rather look at the law on my own. So like Huffines' book, I'd rather read it myself.
Sure. I had a question to get in there
Sure.
that kind of puts the two concepts together. So as a legislature, you'll be limited in what you can do
Mhm.
to see property taxes. Even committing forward it, we recognize it's a process. But one of the things that we have seen very effectively work is that idea of doging government and reducing that maintenance and operations.
Mhm.
So much of that budget
Yeah,
goes
mhm.
forward. You put in place
For your
answers here and there.
bureaucracy in the DA's office.
Yes.
What can you do at the level of the legislature to doge more and to bring more meritocracy to how our government functions?
That's a great question. So specifically, that question was in regards to, I think, what policies in place have I put in place that addressed critical race theory and addressed, and there was a litany of them, whether it was
Common Core,
core-
CRT, SEL.
core curriculum, SEL, all those are tied up in one big deal. And so what I would try to tell people right off the bat was the DA's office was run as the most brutal meritocracy that you had ever met because you're dealing with limited resources. When you have limited resources, then only the best and brightest could get promoted. And I told people, I was like, there's two types of governments. There's the post office where you click your bubble gum, you walk on the back of your heels. And then there's the Navy SEALs. This is the Navy SEALs of government. I will train you, I will invest in you, but I'm going to have to find out what your top end is. And if your top end is not greater than the assignment that you're currently in, I'm going to have to let you go with that assignment. I will teach you how to make a living. I'll teach you what integrity and ethics look like, and I'll teach you trial skills. But some things I'm going to find out may be beyond what your skill set is, whether it's multi-party litigation or whether it's child sex crimes. Emotionally, it may not be a fit for you. You may not have the intellect for white collar crimes. And so the meritocracy that I installed also turned out to be, guess what? You can have minorities. You can have people of a different religious faith. I had people that were cohabitated women with women. And guess what? All they were the best prosecutors, the best investigators. And so when I tell people, hey, look, this DEI, the CRT, you're putting an asterisk on everybody's career. Because when affirmative action, I wrote a paper at A&M, when affirmative action came in place, I said it was the worst thing for the minority community because people would always assume that even the most qualified, I had a guy in law school, one of the smartest, brightest, charismatic guys, was a black guy. And people always assumed that he'd gotten into law school because he was a minority. And it hurt my feelings for him because this guy was everything you'd want in a friend, he was everything you'd want as an advocate, but people would always asterisk him because of affirmative action. It's the same way. It's not it's only a meritocracy when you're able to fire anybody with impunity. And so I think the government needs to be run the same way. I think Brandon is doing, if you saw what he just did at Texas Tech 2 days ago. So Brandon's taken the anti-DEI, anti-CRT. That's really why he got hired as the chancellor there, not just as a fundraiser. And so Brandon installed the state's policy in a memo format and gave them what guidelines meant. So they had 2 Texas Tech professors resign immediately.
Sweet.
And I texted him, I was like, ooh. And he said, shaking things up. So that was a long answer for, I think if you, like that Common Core, all those, everything with CRT, Common Core, everything there that says that the only way that a Caucasian male or female was excellent was because they were born of privilege. That to me smacks of defeatism right off the bat. And I've heard it from both sides. Running a polyglot office like I do, or like I did. Polyglot meaning I had multiple ethnicities, multiple origins, multiple religions, not multiple genders, but 2 genders at the DA's office. We had 2 bathrooms, a male and a female. But I did have some mixed gender relationships. But they were the most hardcore people you ever want to meet in your life. And they will put they put bad people in prison. And my job was to navigate around it and demand excellence out of them and demand conservatism out of them. And you can get that in state government.
Well, and the only other thing that we didn't address there, and maybe you'll talk about in your closing a little, is how does balancing the budget fit in there? That is directly within the control of the legislature. And how can you?
Not only control, it's
within
it's constitutionally required. Yes. So it has to be a balanced budget per the Texas Constitution. I'll try to address that.
What specific legislative priorities will you champion in your first session, and how will those priorities directly benefit the people of District 4 rather than statewide political agendas?
When the lieutenant governor had, and I was very honest with airing my concerns, that the DA, you can't put a thumb on the DA. All you can do is unelect him. You couldn't remove him from office. It's not like Florida, where the governor had that ability to do it of the district attorney. I could have been removed for failing to follow the law. I could be removed for failing to file a class of cases. But what the lieutenant governor told me was, he said, you vote your constituency. You vote your constituency. And so in Montgomery County, I do believe that every sheriff in the state of Texas is now a border sheriff, because even though Trump has done a great job, you still have sanctuary cities and you have sanctuary policies. Harris, Dallas, Barron, Travis County have fallen off the wayside. We're 1 Montgomery away from having a socialist form of government. There's some fights going on in Harris County, and I love to watch it. I just left the Kingwood area Republican women. There are allies, even in Travis County, that think that that form of socialist Democrat government, even the former DA there, two ago, she was an old school Democrat, and she thought that her party had lost its ever loving mind. Because I don't drink, I drive her around while she was drinking up in Travis County. A wonderful lady that was a hardcore prosecutor, but did not buy into the remainder of the philosophy. And so we have to find our allies where we can across the state. We've got to find some people who have a like-minded view in regards to our economics and in keeping the community safe. And so border security, I think, is important because of the proliferation. People don't just go to Starr County and then stay down there. They come to Montgomery County, they come to Houston. The crime, Montgomery County was housing, it's about $60,000 a month. We're housing people that are from Harris County that don't live here, and a large percentage of those were illegal aliens. So that issue is not going away, regardless of all the immigration efforts that Trump does. And I love those. I don't know if the next president 3 years down the road is going to have the same gusto that he does. He's a once in a lifetime character. So border control, public safety issues, when you have judges refusing to follow the law and a mandate from the bench on the civil side and the criminal side, those are issues. The third one for me has been something that the constituency has brought up, and it's over in the Kingwood, Atascocita, Lake Conroe area. Water, and Brandon said it to me early on, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And I did not understand what he meant. He said, but I'm going to tell it to you till you understand it. And so we've got everything from groundwater issues to surface water issues. Webb Melder used to try to get me involved in it. And I was like, Webb, where's the murder? Where's the murder? And he wanted me to look at, I think at one time he wanted me to look at the testimony of two experts that were inconsistent with their testimony. And so whether or not the aquifer was actually filling up or it was recharged. And so some of it were terms of art and some of it were baseline reports that monitor a level but don't have a scientific instrument. And it was too existential for me as the DA to get involved in. He was looking for some type of allies in regards to it. Water is not going away, that issue. So whether it's desalination efforts along the coast, or whether it's the fracking and the pulling of water from one part of the state of Texas. My wife is in oil and gas. She worked for Tejas, Shell, and Anadarko, and now works for a private company doing oil and gas consulting. So we got to have oil and gas, but you got to have water for the fracking. All right. So do we have too much water? I know that drainage, but also know that by sea level, Montgomery County is higher than the Gulf of America, and it flows down. So there are issues in water, and I'm going to use a funny cliche. I'm jumping into the deep end on water issues because even if y'all aren't paying attention to it today, I'm younger than John. This issue is not going away for the next decade. And so whether it's bed and stream, whether it's drainage, whether it's desalination efforts, or whether it's recapturing the water, or whether it's water that leads to industry like the fracking, those issues are not getting enough attention because they're not sexy issues. I'm a criminal law guy. Why am I talking about water? Because evidently it's a lot more important. So I think I have to change that answer. I gave the traditional answer, and the more that I'm at SD4, the more I hear about it, even over in Chambers County. And so that's where the third port. Hello, America. If you have any money, invest it in Chambers County, because a third port is going to be created in Chambers County, and they don't have the infrastructure to support it. It is going to be the largest growth area. So you got Galveston and Houston, and so the port they've done tax abatements, and those abatements come due, and so TGS, it's going to be billions and billions of dollars, and they'll have a port, and they won't have the roads to ship the stuff from, then they won't have hotels for the crews to stay in, and they won't have the concrete, they won't have the dirt, they won't have the concrete trucks. So all that's going to have to get pushed out from the ship channel. Watch Chambers County, what Montgomery County is going through now. That community of 58,000 people, I don't know that they know what's coming. So those are issues that SD4 is in charge of.
Is that the LNG port, or is that not in that one?
You're using an acronym I'm not familiar with. No, man, this is just going to be a regular port of entry for freight, shipping, transnational. The reason I got involved with it is it was one of the subcommittees that Brandon was over. And I started getting phone calls from the Galveston Boat Pilots Association, from the Houston Boat Pilots Association, which I would have thought that they would have been sister or brothers. and they're competing. And the gist of it is, even a warship, it doesn't matter how big it is. If you come from wherever, if you come into one of the ports, you have to have a local ship captain bring it in. And I've seen it with cruise liners. I was not aware that it had to be military vessels and all vessels because it's such a small area. If you mess up, then you have created $1 trillion problem, not $100,000 problem. And so there's only like 100 from Houston and only like 25 from Galveston and none from Chambers. And yet that's where the port's going. So I have, when I tell you I've jumped into an area, as you can tell, I'm excited about it. And I've said, nobody has called me because somebody's dead. And that's a change for me.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, to play on top of that, what you were saying, Larry used to be on the water board, Raw Water District, and I took his spot.
So you groundwater?
I'm groundwater.
Okay.
So
There's
water is
100 of them.
Water's the new oil.
Brandon said it to me a decade ago, and I thought,
When I come from the oil industry.
yes. So I didn't understand the overlap there. And Brandon said it to me a decade ago, and he was on one of the committees that dealt with it quite a bit. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's got to be the most boring thing in the world. I get water from a bottle, and I get it from the tap. It,
Put it on your hose.
it was too far away for me to understand until it sits on your desk. And like the $1 billion, I know the Tea Party voted against the $1 billion in infrastructure. And I go, man, I don't know that that was the right call. I don't know who should be paying for it, but somebody needs to start paying attention to it. So, because it's there until it ain't.
True that. Have you talked to Jim Spigner, President of Lone Star Groundwater?
I talked to Jim last night. I'm sorry, we were at East Montgomery County. Fred was there. Jim was there. Jim's doing a good job getting this RBS, Rebecca, Sarah, and her name might be Betty. She's going to hate me if I can't remember it, but I remember the acronym of the three ladies. He is having them do a bunch of front-facing stuff. He wants the Lone Star Groundwater directors involved in any conversation. And so I've now seen this group of ladies, and we sat there for probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes yesterday. They've invited me for a tour, and they've got it condensed down to about to an hour of what they want me to come see and view and hear, which is perfect for an attorney. I'm like, hey, look, don't tell me it's science if it's art. I would run into that with pathologists and with blood spatter. And so when people would tell you it's science, pathology gives way to entomology, and entomology gives way to anthropology. Okay, and they will all three tell you that they're scientists. A pathologist will swear up and down that pathology is science-based. Okay, so when does the pathology, forensic pathology, when does the study of bugs, entomology, when does that become the science that overlays pathology? And there's always a fight between two experts that will swear on an oath. Well, the science of bugs for dead bodies, when maggots form, it's my world, right?
Yeah.
So that's entomology of determining time of death and manner of death. And then anthropology takes over after that. So when those two overlap, then you have two experts saying that they're both right. And if it's science, then science is supposed to be science. And that was my pushback yesterday. Don't tell me it's science when you tell me how much water is in the aquifer. When it's not, it's logs. So the logs measure how much water is in there, but what instrument are they using to measure? And so I always like to find out from people when you say it's science. If you say you're a political scientist like me, I know that there's some art within the science. And so I'm always trying to figure out what the true baseline is before I can start to figure out data. Yeah, it's yeah.
Go ahead, Larry.
One of our questions was, do you support or oppose implementing term limits for elective offices? Why or why not? And you said, yes, public office should be a season, not a career. Elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sure. I believe that public service is a way of life, but I don't know that public office is a way of life. And so I've never intentionally challenged people to unelect me, but what I've done is taken positions that are unpopular. And if people unelect me, they will never stop me from being a public servant. I was National Honor Society, so you did community service projects. I founded Students Against Drunk Driving when I was in high school. And so those are all service things that you do, right? You got to do, what y'all are doing is public service. You're in public office. You've been on several boards. Those are all boards, right? And you have a certain amount of expertise, and you gain more expertise after a while. Maybe you're not the most popular guy on Lone Star Groundwater this year, but it doesn't stop you from serving here. And so I do believe that public service, it's a very Catholic thing. Service is. And I believe that's where you get your value and your worth as a person serving other people. On the other hand, whether it's public office or not is left up to the voters. I believe that question specifically asked me about Congress. And we've seen the Nancy Pelosi's. I have no idea how people make money in government. I really don't. I will be happy to show you my bank account. I'll be happy to show you my retirement account. I don't know how people start on a job that makes 185, because that's what a congressman makes, and yet they're multi millionaires afterwards. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how to figure that out. I think that it does get abusive. One of my concerns as the DA was I going to age out? In other words, I would always tell my people, your job is to make sure that I get up every day and I do the job. And when I come late and leave early, it's time for me to go. Now, I didn't leave that way. I was still in trial. But I've been around many elected officials, many, that their subordinates, their chiefs and their immediates would say, oh, we've told so-and-so he don't even have to come to the office. All he has to do is get elected and we'll run the place. And that is so galling to me as a servant. And so if you get up, God love the former tax assessor, J.R. Moore. J.R. Moore was in his office every day at 7 a.m. At the end, he was still in his office at 7 a.m. So I do believe there are some people that get up and they do the job every day, and that's up to the voters to decide. But there should be a litmus test and a set of metrics. Judges are the same way. The Judicial Accountability Act made them kind of have some metrics in regards to whether or not they're being productive. And if they're not being productive, then I think they ought to be removed. Same way here. If I'm not doing any good, then make me leave.
But you don't have a term set for yourself on how long you're going to stay. Continue to serve that position before you run for governor.
You know that's never even been the rumor. You know that's not the rumor. You know what the rumor is. What's the rumor? What's the rumor? What's the rumor about me? Attorney General.
Yeah.
That's always
been the rumor.
That's always been the rumor.
Yeah.
So
that's really what you want to go for next.
I believe that being a prosecutor on behalf of the state of Texas is a way that my epitaph will be on my headstone. Paxton has been incredibly effective. I'm trying to think who the AG was. Was it Abbott? Who was AG before Paxton?
Abbott was before that.
And I heard somebody one time say, I get up every day suing Washington. And that to me took a lot of wind out of my sails. I'm a violent crimes prosecutor. And what people don't know is the other 251 counties, by the time you get past Montgomery County, we're the 10th largest DA's office in the state. Half the DA's offices had less than 10 total personnel. The AG's office used to be the trial component for rural communities. And when I had that idea, it was to get into the rural areas. It was to do effective border prosecution and prop up Starr County, prop up Del Rio, Brackettville, and all those. And then you start to see that some of being the AG has to deal with engaging in Washington politics. And there's a component of that as well. But that thought of, you can't spell AG from DA. You just couldn't. I could be the most effective DA, and I love being DA. So is it a possibility? If my career ended up as the Attorney General, I would think that I had a full cycle, still keep community safe, and still Texify Washington. And so, but Bob, I'm 57. I believe that I'm an effective advocate. I believe that I've been a solution for a lot of people's problems, but the ability to communicate is something that you have to work on. And the moment I become feeble and I can't get the job done, I'll pull the cord on myself long before the voters quit voting for me. My own pride will make me take my husk of a shell and go back to the small city of Montgomery. I'll pull the plug on myself before the voters do.
So one of the questions was, we got about 10 minutes. Please describe your views on gambling as a funding source for education and other budget items. You had said it's not an issue
Sure.
that voters have brought to me as a concern.
It-
But what's your opinion?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked. So there is a lot of money being invested right now in Senate. There was an article written in the Texas Tribune. Y'all may have gotten it, I think last week. Luke Macias was talking about it. And there was a correlation between TLR, who has endorsed me, Texans for Lawsuit Reform, and some of the state reps. And there's a lot of money in the Lee Wambaugh. I don't know if y'all are following that Senate race. It's up in Fort Worth. The Lieutenant Governor is heavily involved in it. And as that race goes, other senatorial races may go. I am Catholic. I'm not morally opposed. I play poker. I don't drink, even though it's not against my religion. I don't do it because I've never seen it end well. Almost every report I've ever seen with a homicide starts with, we were sitting around drinking.
Wow.
So the things I stay away from, I play, hold my beer. I play Texas Hold'em, and so there's things that there is a fun part, but in the SD4, the issues that have been raised for me have always been the red meat stuff. Nobody asked me about gambling, but Chambers County is 20 minutes away from the Louisiana border. When people want to gamble in Chambers County, they go to Louisiana.
Right.
Is it a possible funding source? I've heard two things. One is for every dollar that the Texas would receive in gambling, it's $4 in expenses, because you do have a higher depression rate. You do have a higher hospitalization rate. It's like the THC argument. I mean, increased depression. There's a cost that is an accelerated cost on top of it. They've run Republican polls, and Republican polls in the general election are about 6 out of 10 Republicans are okay with gambling, but they don't know the specifics. And so, do you want a destination resort, or do you want the handle pulls in every restaurant? But the primary voters in a gubernatorial, only about 3 out of 10 are in support of it. So it hasn't been an issue for me, and I don't think I don't know that it's a cockamamie scheme, but I don't know where the lottery money went to fix education. I don't know where parimutuel betting is going. We have dog racing, we have horse racing, we do have a lottery. You do have online gambling. You can go to sports betting right now, and if all of us wanted to, I could deal them up right here. You could bet a mill, a mill, a mill, a mill, a mill. We could all bet so much money that we go into debt immediately. It wouldn't take long for me, as long as the house doesn't get a cut. So gambling in Texas is not illegal. It's illegal for the house to get a cut, right? So that's for me. It was always you'll notice there's no gambling in Montgomery County. It's not because I'm Catholic. It's because it was against the law. So there is no move, and there's been no push that I'm aware of to even put it on the Senate floor. And so I'm not trying to, but please don't think that I'm above gambling. I've been to Vegas. I've been to Lake Charles. We ran over there. I don't like red light districts. I don't like what it brings. I've always told people, hey, look, if you want a red light district, go to Harris County because it's already there. We're going to keep Montgomery County this way. Right. We don't have SOBs in Montgomery County. And it doesn't mean that Cindy's love works. It doesn't mean that people don't need their negligees for their honeymoons. That's not my issue. But I just like an old-fashioned community. And if you want to get involved with it, go. And so when I say nobody in Senate District 4, the only person who's asked me about it has been Sands Hotel, and the lobbyists have been very nice, very nice. And they have a detailed plan for destination resorts, and they look cool. And they were like, oh, we're going to put them in Dallas, which is, you're almost a Yankee if you live in Dallas. And they want to put them in Galveston because that's where gambling, the last ones in Texas. So they've got specific ideas in their Chamber of Commerce pitch. But Montgomery County is so close to everything. Nobody in Montgomery County is saying we want it or we don't want it. And so when y'all ask me, I'm like, I'm not morally opposed, but if somebody says that the gambling is going to fix the economy, that's not true. And you can't balance the state budget on it, and you're not going to be able to fix property taxes with it. So if you're going to try to sell it, then be honest with it. It's just entertainment, and you're going to lose your money, because the reason they build resorts in the desert is because people give them money.
And I think about the negative side of it too, whether it's sex trafficking, drugs, more addiction.
My whole life is the consequences of whether it's the rooms down in there with the murders, the human sexual assaults. There is no party without consequences. Like I said, my whole life has always been the morning after. The consequences is where I live.
So, what?
Go ahead. We're at 55 minutes now, but go ahead.
I'll make it quick.
And I'll try to answer short.
It won't be hard for her, I don't think. But well, I will ask, since you brought up Sands, are you going to be taking money from Sands?
No.
Okay, good. That's a good answer.
No, I won't. No.
We talked earlier about.
Now, Bob, I will tell you, if you go gamble and you win $1,000 and you come back and you give me
half
some of that,
yeah.
by God, I'll take it.
Okay.
Campaign contribution.
I meant thank you, John.
Thank you.
As a legitimate
not as a bribe, but as a contribution.
Yes. Yes.
I appreciate you coming out, and you've come to a few of our meetings. We often have candidates and elected officials come to our meetings when they're running, and we never see them again. And when we do see them, and if we confront them for not voting properly, then we have issues with them. We're the employers. Elected officials are the employees, and many of them don't feel like they have to answer to their employers. They can just do what they want to do, and you've seen that with the race that we've got going on right now for 2 House members. What's your opinion on that?
John and I have talked about it. I think you and I have spoken about it. So I know what my personal experience is. Initially, it was an existential issue that I didn't think had any impact on me as the DA until I started testifying. And so the committees that I typically testify to are in front of criminal jurisprudence, and I'm trying to think that some of the companion ones, border, that kind of stuff. And so the first day I was asked to come and testify by the committee chair of the House. And I got there at 8 a.m. for an 8 a.m. call. And about 7 o'clock that evening, I was so mad when I left because I had not been called to testify. Now, I am a working lawyer, and so every lawyer at the DA's office is like a Marine. Every Marine is a rifleman. Well, every lawyer at the DA's office had their own cases. And so I have cases that I was responsible for, murders, some sexual assaults, and that kind of stuff, because it's a perishable skill and you have to stay in it. So when I go up there and I leave my jurisdiction to go testify to a bill, I don't want to be first, but I don't want to be sidelined. So Gene Wu became the vice chair of my committee. Gene Wu is a former prosecutor, and he tells people he's a former prosecutor, but he's currently a criminal defense attorney. It's Gene Wu. It was Jolanda Jones. I don't know if y'all know Jolanda.
Oh yeah.
I've known Jolanda for almost 30 years as I was a prosecutor in Harris County. And Jolanda is two different people. Behind the scenes, funny, charismatic, knows exactly what the value of the case is. The Jolanda that I would have to interface with as the DA while she was up there was the waterworks and everything as a constitutional violation. And I was not really ready for that metamorphosis of having a decent conversation behind the scenes of what was a public safety issue. And so Wu would, loggerhead, I'm trying to think of the word, when somebody would steamroll the conversations for hours upon hours upon hours. 12 hours later, I hadn't testified. So when I left the first day, I texted Will, I texted Creighton, and I texted Patrick, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. I was so incensed. the waste of my time and the way that the committee was being run. And it was a very real impact. And had Wu not been the vice chair, regardless if it would have made it past calendars and all that, it wouldn't have been a waste of time. And so that was the first time. And I was so mad, I swore I wouldn't go back. But when the Senate asked me to come and testify at 8:30, I was testifying. I was like, whew, man, this is a lot of difference. 31 people versus 150 people. The Senate is run by the lieutenant governor. One of the deciding factors of would I run for Senate. There was the only body within the government that has a stated conservative bearing and is run by a true conservative, and he runs it that way. And I thought, okay, I can be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of the mess. So it had an impact on me. And I, when it came time for the campaign, Will had asked me for my endorsement, and I said no. Will also voted against pay raises for government officials, and it was a political position. And I understood why he didn't want to do it, but I had not had a pay raise in 10 years. And there's government service, and then there's stupidity. And there came a time when I felt like my career was going to come to an end just because inflation and everything else. When you're making the same pay for 10 years and the county is growing at the rate, my responsibilities kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And after a while, I mean, I have to face the financial reality. I do eventually have to start. I'm not as young as I look. I have to prepare for retirement. So I had said no. I wasn't going to endorse him. Then John came out with a position about he was going to remove the ability for officers to conduct warrantless searches. And then that's when I endorsed Will. It was me and the sheriff and all 5 constables. Because I said, John. And so there's all the texts between John and I. And it turns out John didn't know what the position he was advocating for, he didn't understand what the consequences were. And so, for example, the position that John had was, I want to do away with warrantless searches. And so the other night at Wood Forest, he goes, you've endorsed Will? And I said, yes, John. I said, you're trying to remove protections for the community. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you say no warrantless searches. If somebody breaks into your house and they're running to his house, I, as an officer in hot pursuit, can pursue you into a home and arrest you. That's hot pursuit. That's a warrantless search by an officer. Terry frisk, Terry pat downs. And so if an officer encounters somebody in a dangerous place under dangerous circumstances, an officer in fear for his life can do what's called a pat down. Have you ever heard of a pat down search where they do like this? Make sure that's a warrantless search. If I arrest Larry for a murder, you're sitting there and the gun, he blows off the smoke and you're in a puddle of blood. When I go to arrest Larry, which is what you would want a cop to do, right? A warrantless search is I search Larry before I put him in the back of a police car and I send him to the jail. That's called search incident to a lawful arrest. That is a warrantless search. When I come to Bob's house and Bob is lying in a pool of blood and I look through the window and I see Bob's feet twitching, then I don't know if Bob hit his head or if Bob spilled the ketchup, but all I know is that's called community caretaking function, medical necessity. An officer does not have to wake up a judge in the middle of the night, sober a judge up, luckily not in Montgomery County, but in other communities, doesn't have to go get a warrant to conduct a search for community caretaking. An officer doesn't have to get a search for wingspan. And so if Bob's standing there and I go to arrest Bob and he's in his home, officers are allowed to look for weapons. It's called a wingspan search. They're allowed to do it in cars. They're allowed to get you out. All those things are public safety issues. John did not know. I don't think John appreciated until I pointed it out to him. But John says, I'm a criminal justice major. John says, so I assume that when John says that he's going to remove him, that John knows exactly what the impact is. To John's credit, John said he did not realize that. I got a call from Scott Robbins, and Scott said, hey, why are you taking this position? I was like, because it's a public safety position. You're going to imperil every cop, not just in the state of Texas, but every cop that ever put on a uniform if you start removing some of these protections that are meant to protect the community. You want a safe community. To John's credit, John said, I didn't recognize that was going to be the import of it. So,
He's backed off with it.
he said he removed it from his website, and I believe that he has. John is not my enemy. Some of the positions that John took were so narrow focused that we're going to have an impact. I don't think that he realized that we're going to have an impact within criminal justice. Look, Will got a demerit. He got a demerit, and you and I talked about this. The demerit was because he voted for Burroughs, and the local CEC gave him the demerit, and that's within the rules. I don't know that that stopping Will from putting his campaign materials in the Republican Party, I don't know that that is a good strategy for a lot of reasons. I don't put my stuff there, but if y'all wouldn't allow me to put my stuff there, I think I'd get sympathy for it. And so some of those fights go beyond, I think, what the demerit should be. He did not. He voted for Burroughs, and that caused me trouble, and it was why I was not going to endorse him. And then a specific candidate brought out a more specific point. I filed, I think, 8 bills through Will in this last session. 5 of them passed into bills, and 4 of them made into law, and they were all community safety issues, all fentanyl bills, all specific things. Will's been very, very successful getting public safety laws passed. And John was taking a position that was contrary to public safety, and he lost my support because of it. And so, I want y'all's support, but I'm not trying to be all things to all people. Public safety is the most important thing to me.
Well,
Go ahead.
oh, you
Go ahead, and then
5 minutes.
we'll finish with your 5 minutes, but go ahead with your question.
One of the reasons that that fight went to that level that you're not comfortable with is my oath of office as a precinct chair says I'm not allowed to support
Right.
Central Republicans.
Right.
So that
I think
would
I
put me in
administered.
a position where I couldn't do the right thing either way. I would either have to do it at early
Sure.
voting and hand it out from the booth and break my oath of office, or not do it and be against what the GOP asked me to do. So the precinct chair, we were in that difficult position.
John asked me to swear in the new precinct chairs, and I read the oath. And as a lawyer, I read the oath, and I know what the oath said. And it said about supporting people and supporting the public platform. And you notice I didn't bat an eye. And I do believe that elections have consequences, and so do votes. On the other hand, I have been married 32 years, and my wife has been mad at me so many, many times. But I think I've been an effective husband at times. And for public policy in regards to public safety issues, Will has delivered. The House and the Senate are both very specific. Under the current model, the Speaker had a lot of authority. I agree with Boucher. I don't like that model at all. I wish it was, but under the world that then existed, I think his vote may have, I don't know how it helped him on everything else, but I can tell you my own committee, the Criminal Justice Committee, even run by a Republican, wasn't strong enough to get the stuff done that needed to be done for Montgomery County. And I could get Will to file bills for me in other committees, and he was able to get them done. And so you have to balance the needs of, so fentanyl. Fentanyl was the one that we've worked on for the last 2 sessions. We were finally able to make fentanyl delivery and murder. Oh yeah, it's good because it was the one that was killing people. Well, you got to have a House bill and you have to have a Senate companion bill. And so Huffman had the Senate companion bill, but it was Will and somebody else. It wasn't Gene Wu, and it wasn't Jolanda Jones. So it becomes one of those, one of those issues. And so I'm glad you gave me the chance to explain how it had a personal impact on me. He did not vote for my money, and he made it difficult for me for public safety. On the other hand, he was able to get bills passed or bills filed for us. And so it was a very specific set of circumstances.
All right, if you want to take up 5 minutes on close, and then we'll wrap it up. We've got another
I will
interview
make it quick, and I won't take the full 5. I appreciate the time. I hope that everybody knows I never had the support of the Lieutenant Governor and of Brandon. I have always been the outsider looking in. I was with the Republican leadership with Jim Jenkins, Pete Gedderts, Jim Doyle long before these groups. Bob was there. I remember when Bob and we always didn't have gray hair. And we always haven't agreed, but Bob has never walked away from me. I've never walked away from Bob. I've never shied from conversations or confrontations with John because I think that people believe that I can be effective as a legislator. I can be effective as a communicator. And I am hometown enough that people know what my values are. I don't have any more money than what I started with. both my parents died, and I have 4 acres in Comfort, Texas. You can look up, but I share it with 2 brothers. So I didn't make any money in the government other than what my salary is. I don't plan on enriching myself as a senator, but I have the skill set that it takes to effectively advocate on the needs of Montgomery County and the state of Texas. I have the plan, I have the support for it, and I believe that I have a servant's heart. But I also believe I am responsible for my decisions. My phone number has not changed in 28 years. The number that I have now is the number that Bob's had and that Pete has, and I answer the hard calls. And so I do believe that public accountability is important. I hope that I've gotten your support because 90% of the time our values overlap. And just like my endorsement of Will, I can explain it. Whether or not you support it or not, at least you've had the respect to hear me out as to why I did what I did. And to John's credit, he heard it out too and went, "Ooh, I may have made a mistake." So, Texas needs leaders. In the statewide game, I'm actually a young man. The lieutenant governor is 77 years old, and I'm 57 years old. He's 20 years older than me. I went from being a totem pole DA to a young, I'll be going as a young state official. I believe that Montgomery County is the way that Montgomery County goes, the way that Texas goes.
Yep.
And the way that Texas goes is the way the United States go. And I don't believe there's going to be anybody more effective as a representative of Senate District 4 than me. I want y'all's support. I'm going to run, but I won't run in defiance of anybody. I want the support, but if I can't get the support, if you feel like you got to stay along the sidelines, then give me a chance and continue to ask me why I do what I do, or continue to run into me, whether you're sitting there at the bar downtown in Conroe. I live in Montgomery. You can't run too far to run into me. And so I try not to disappoint people, but I do try to deal with people honestly. And I try to take responsibility for the things I do and say. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do they contact you?
I'm sorry.
How do they contact you?
Oh, my phone number, 936-718-2941. That is my personal number. My website is Ligon for Texas. Or my personal email is bsligon@msn.com. The S stands for Shannon. Thank you.
I just
Thank-
clarified that.
Thank you very
Yes.
much for coming in. Good luck in the
Thank you.
campaign.
I appreciate it. Roger. Good seeing you.
That's
Sir.
fine.